Well, hi, Brian Janey here, the piano appraiser. And on this channel, we talk about the do's and don'ts of piano care, tips for buying and selling pianos, as well as various scenarios regarding their appraisal. And in this particular video, we're talking about what you might need to know, or what you would need to know, if you're trying to sell a piano yourself privately. Now, if you have any other sort of circumstance that you're watching this for, it doesn't apply. This is just someone that is privately selling the piano to another private buyer in a treaty sort of circumstance. This is not related to selling a piano at an auction. This is not related to selling a piano in a dealership. This is not related to valuing your piano in an appraisal process for a tax circumstance or other situations. It's only for peer-to-peer sales in a private party setting. And number one, if you are trying to sell a piano privately yourself, the thing to think about is, what does that piano sound like? And I always encourage people that are trying to sell a piano privately themselves to get it tuned. Make sure it sounds as good as it possibly can if it hasn't been tuned in a while. If you've been tuning it regularly, like every 6 months or so over the course of its life, and now you decide that you need to sell it, it might be okay. But I would encourage you, the instant that that ad goes live on whatever social media site or whatever it is that you intend to use to try to advertise it, to make sure that it's been tuned like right about then. And along those lines, also, when it is tuned, try to get the piano tuner or technician that you're working with to write down some comments, good and bad, realistic, about its condition. And it may actually give you something to display to a private party seller or a buyer, private party buyer. If someone comes to look at it, it's like, hey, this piano technician guy, call him, talk to him, see what he has to say about it. He might actually encourage the sale if it's a nice piano. So, number one, get your piano serviced if it hasn't been serviced in a long time, or if it's not been serviced recently. Get that done before you think about putting it out for sale. Number two, be realistic about the piano's age. Pianos that are more than 60 or 80 years old and might be categorized as antiques, wow, they do not really honestly have hardly any value. It might be right about zero. One of the things that people don't realize about pianos is that they have lifespans. When they get old enough to collect Social Security and be on Medicare, they're going to have similar problems to someone in that stage of life. So, be totally understanding about what it is that you're dealing with. However, if your piano is 30 years old or newer, you may be okay to attempt to try to sell it privately after you've gotten it serviced and it looks awesome and you're totally cool with having people over to play it and try it out, and you've sold other things this way. So, yeah. But if you are, unrealistic about its age, you're going to have problems. I had a gentleman that I was dealing with recently that was attempting to sell a 45-year-old Yamaha. And he had a crazy price on it. I was trying to get him to understand that that's a little nuts, but he was persistent. And I think that he actually did something that is my next point, is he looked at a piano dealer's price and thought he could ask something similar. And that's number three. Do not look at piano dealer prices and expect that you actually yourself can offer it for a similar amount. And why is that? Why can't I just cut and paste with a piano dealer's price? Because, wow, well, you're not a piano dealer. Piano dealers, when they put a piano out for sale, they do a lot of things. They provide a warranty with the piano after the sale. They do a lot of preparation and tuning and service on that instrument prior to putting it out for sale. They are engaged in a lot of other things that basically allow them to be in a position of liability in attempting to sell it. So, You, however, if you're selling a piano privately, are selling it as is, which basically means that any and everybody that might be buying that piano, they are the ones that are responsible for all of what might be wrong with it if it's found out later. So yeah, when you're selling something as is, you can't ask as much for it. And if you are actually have a piano that is less than 30 years old, 20 or 30 years old, you might actually talk to the dealer. And then that's number 4. Realize piano dealers are not your enemy in this particular process. You may be able to actually find out if they can put it on consignment for you. They may be able to actually interested in buying it from you outright. Realize they're not going to offer you what, much of a lot of money for it, because they're basically going to be offering it to you at a sort of wholesale price. But there are circumstances where working directly with a dealer might be a good option. And realize that when it is actually something that they are selling on consignment, that the arrangement usually is a 60-40 split. Much like somebody that has a piece of fine art that takes it to a gallery to attempt to assist them, in an effort to try to sell it. It's a similar sort of thing with a piano dealership. You have to be willing to deal with whatever it is that their part of the sale might be, and I always do encourage people, if you've got a nicer piano, think about working with a dealer. If you've got a Van Gogh, you don't put it out at a garage sale. You don't put it up on Craigslist or Facebook Marketplace. You give it to a gallery. If you've got a nicer piano, think about working with a dealership and perhaps having them assist you with all of that. One little additional point I'll slip in here with is that if you do actually talk to a dealership, they are interested, and you actually are understanding what it is they're telling you could be the possible price they would put it out for sale for, and they disclose what your portion would be and the 60-40, whatever that might be. Realize that 60% is a good number to know, because that actually is kind of the window of what it is that you yourself could be capable of asking for it privately, because you've taken the dealership out of it, but that 60% represents what you would make if they were successful at selling it. So that is kind of a big tip to understand that. And number 5, you can actually go and look around yourself on the World Wide Web if you know the make of the piano, the model of the piano, if you have an idea about its age because you've taken the serial number and you've located that and looked it up. You can poke around and, look around on various places where pianos are sold privately. Those places are obviously Craigslist, Facebook Marketplace, Piano Mart is another one, Reverb is a gear site for musicians, and I find actually a lot of pianos are for sale there. eBay is another one, although eBay is kind of a little bit intense because you have to deal with their fees and all of that sort of circumstance. But those are all places that you could certainly look with the make and model of your piano and figure out what it is that it might actually be selling for in other realms. Realize that some people might have completely unrealistic prices on there, but at least you'll begin to get a little bit of a range. And one thing to be super careful about is, there are circumstances where people will put something out for sale and it will have an emotional price on it. It was grandma's, and they're not going to let it go for less than this because of that, or some other bizarre circumstance. It was a family piece and it's got a lot of emotion attached to it, and it might be emotionally priced. Or like I said earlier, they may have just actually looked at a dealership and sold and saw that it was for sale and decided to cut and paste that price. And like I've mentioned, that's a mistake. But you do actually want to be careful as well. Getting, crazy guesses from piano technicians. Strangely, there are unfortunately guys out there that will throw what I lovingly call a wag out there, a wild ass guess as to what it is that they may think it's worth. And I generally tend to try to discourage piano technicians from doing that because it's not researched. They didn't look at the market themselves. They may not actually even be aware of the market. They may just be going on some sort of hunch they had that might be completely off base. It may set expectations too high or too low. So yeah, do your own research. And obviously in this whole course, I am the piano appraiser. And if you do need any assistance about these sorts of things, feel free to be in touch with me. But when you are, and this is number 6, looking around and seeing what other prices for the piano you find, when you find them, realize that piano dealers use all of those same sites. They are trying to widen their reach. It's free advertising if they do something on Craigslist, Facebook Marketplace, or something like that. And you can generally tell if it's a piano dealer that is trying to sell something in one of those social media situations, because the piano will look extremely staged. It will be over concrete floors. It will have other pianos surrounding it. If you look into where the ad is at, they may even mention the dealership that it's located in. So, just be aware that those piano dealers do actually use those sites as well. And that is something that, again, we already kind of discussed the business about why it is piano dealers are asking different prices than someone that's selling a piano as is can ask. So, and this is the last tip, number 7. It takes time to sell a piano. It seriously does. I have sold a number of pianos myself as a piano technician. And, the piano dealers even, when they take in a piano into their inventory, they expect it to sell within 60 to 90 days. If it's just a regular upright or a medium to smallish grand, they expect that piano to sell within 60 to 90 days. And if it is a nicer piano, if it's a Steinway that's been completely redone, or it's a newer one, or it's a Yamaha that's, 6 foot or bigger, or even, a Bechstein or a Blüthner or a Bösendorfer or a Schimmel or something like that, the nicer pianos, they may actually be willing to wait 1 to 2 years for a buyer to show up. And if you yourself, as a private party seller, are not in a position to take that amount of time, wow, you are needing to probably really seriously reduce your price to attract a buyer, and realize you're not selling the piano, you're liquidating it, because you do not have the appropriate amount of time to expose it to the market. So that is the most important thing to realize if you're trying to sell a piano privately, is that you need time in the market. And you are using yourself in private party circumstances, for the most part, social media sites, to attempt to sell it. And that may take, you may need to give yourself a wider window than even a piano dealer has in how it is. Because, a piano dealer, when people pull up in front of a piano dealership and walk into the door, they're there to buy a piano. So it's something that is super important to keep in mind, that does take some time. And like I said, if you've got a nicer piano, wow, think about dealing with a dealer. I mean, there's a number of them around me in Southern California that I'm familiar with that do consignment sorts of circumstances. And there may be actually dealerships around you. Call them, talk to them, take pictures of your piano, email it to them. You might find yourself in a spot where that actually might be a better arrangement to either consign it or just take a lesser amount for it and just have them buy it outright if it's a nicer instrument that you've taken care of. So I hope that's helpful. If you have any questions or need to chat about any of this, feel free to hop on my website, thepianoappraiser.com, and fill in the little Engage the Piano Appraiser form that is under a button on the front of my website. And we could certainly have a conversation if you need some assistance about this. I look forward to being of service if that is the case. And if you have any questions, put them in the comment section. If you have anything that it is that you want me to do videos about, also put that in the comment section. And if you want to give this a thumbs up, or even do something crazy like subscribe to this interesting piano guy that's doing videos on YouTube on occasion, do that. That would be super great. Thank you for watching. All right, Brian Janey here.